June 6, 1944. 1 a.m., Wider Stands Nest, 62. For 20-year-old Heinrich Severloh of the German 352nd Infantry Division, the war has shrunk to a single concrete slit overlooking Omaha Beach. Out in the pitch-black English Channel, a fleet of nearly 7,000 vessels is waking up. At 5:50 a.m., the Earth liquidates. Allied naval guns and heavy bombers unleash a deafening barrage. Severloh's bunker violently shakes, chalky dust choking the air. But the Allied bombers overshoot their targets, dropping their payloads too far inland. When the smoke clears, the German concrete holds fast. And then, at 6:30 a.m., the ramps of the Higgins boats drop. Severloh's orders are simple. Wait until the Americans are knee-deep in the surf. Then, the mechanical slaughter begins. He fires his MG-42 machine gun, a weapon capable of firing 25 7.92mm rounds every single second. The psychological detachment is absolute. Over the next 9 hours, Severloh fires 12,000 machine gun rounds and 400 rifle rounds. He fires until the barrel of his weapon glows red and warps from the heat. He fires until the spent brass casings bury his boots. Below him, the men of the American 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions are trapped in a crossfire, weighed down by heavy gear and rising tides. Over 2,400 Americans fall on this single beach. But one man and one bunker cannot stop the tide of an invasion. Severloh's tracer rounds expose his position. The American destroyer USS Frankfurt maneuvers dangerously close to the shore, turning its massive 5-inch naval guns directly onto his bunker. By 3:30 p.m., shattered and out of ammunition, Severloh abandons his post and flees inland, the Airborne and the swamps. On June 7th, as Severloh retreats from the bloody sands of Omaha, a different kind of nightmare is already unfolding just a few miles inland. To protect the beaches from counterattacks, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel had ordered the Douve and Murdereux river valleys flooded. The American 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions dropped in the chaotic, flak-filled skies late on the night of June 5th and the early hours of June 6th, find themselves plunging into black, freezing water, weighed down by over 100 pounds of equipment. Dozens of paratroopers drown in the dark before they even unclip their harnesses. Those who survive the drop are scattered, isolated, and hunted. Between June 10th and June 14th, they fight in waist-deep muck around the town of Carentan. On a narrow, elevated causeway nicknamed Purple Heart Lane, there is no cover. Elite German Fallschirmjäger, veteran paratroopers, use bolt-action Karabiner 98K rifles to systematically pick off the Americans in the water below. It is a terrifying, intimate war of sniper fire, bayonets, and drowning. By the end of June, the 101st Airborne suffers a staggering 50% casualty rate. The infantry secures the western flank, but to the east, the invasion is slamming into a wall of steel. The armored Meatgrinder. The ancient city of Caen was supposed to fall to the British on day 1, June 6th. Instead, between June 6th and July 20th, it becomes a month-long armored Meatgrinder. While the Americans fight in the swamps, British and Canadian tank crews face the fanatical 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend. In the ruined streets and open fields around the city, it is a drastically unfair fight. The standard Allied Sherman tanks are death traps against German armor. The Germans nickname the Shermans Ronsons, a morbid joke claiming they light up the first time they are struck. Lurking in the ruins are German Tiger and Panther tanks, heavily armored beasts armed with devastating 88mm guns that can punch through a Sherman from over a mile away. Only a few modified British tanks, the Sherman Fireflies, carry a 17-pounder gun capable of cracking a Tiger's frontal armor. To break the immovable German armor, the Allies resort to absolute destruction. In Operation Charnwood, beginning on July 8th, heavy bombers carpet-bomb Caen into dust. By late July, over 30,000 Anglo-Canadian soldiers fall, and 3,000 French civilians are buried alive in the rubble of their own homes. The Eastern Front is paralyzed, and in the West, the Americans are walking into a labyrinth. The Green Hell. Throughout the first 3 weeks of July, the American GY enters a psychological hell known as the Bocage. The Norman landscape is divided by centuries-old dirt walls, 10 to 15 feet thick, bound together by dense, twisted roots and topped with impenetrable bushes. The Romans built them. The Germans turn each one into a fortress. You cannot see the enemy until you are 10 feet away. Combat devolves into primal, yard-by-yard slaughter. American troops rely on fragmentation grenades, Thompson submachine guns, and flamethrowers to clear out machine gun nests hidden in the foliage. The psychological toll of an invisible enemy, hiding behind every single leaf, shatters the minds of thousands of soldiers. Combat fatigue pulls men off the line as quickly as bullets. American engineers eventually weld steel tusks, made from dismantled German beach obstacles, onto their tanks to violently bulldoze through the dirt walls. But progress is agonizing. Taking the single ruined town of St. Lo, which finally falls on July 18th, costs the Americans 11,000 casualties. Ground troops alone cannot break the Green Prison. The sky falls July 25th. Operation Cobra. To break the hedgerow stalemate, the United States military decides to simply delete the landscape. At 9:38 a.m., General Omar Bradley calls in the heavy bombers of the 8th Air Force. Over 3,000 aircraft, including massive B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, swarm the sky. They drop over 3,000 tons of high explosives onto a microscopic strip of land just 4 miles wide. The German Panzer Lehr Division, positioned directly beneath the bombardment, is practically vaporized. The German commander, Fritz Bayerlein, later describes the battlefield as resembling the surface of the moon. 60-ton tanks are tossed into the air by the kinetic shockwaves. German infantrymen go mad from the concussions, completely buried alive in their dugouts. But the sheer chaos of the bombardment spares no one. Smoke obscures the drop zones, leading to catastrophic short rounds. Heavy bombs fall onto American lines, killing over 100 U.S. soldiers in friendly fire. Among the dead is Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, the highest-ranking American officer to die in the European theater. The blast finally shatters the German line. What follows is not a retreat, but a massacre. The highway of death between August 12th and August 21st. The grand finale of the Normandy campaign unfolds. The American breakout succeeds, sweeping east. Simultaneously, British, Canadian, and Polish armored divisions push south. They trap the retreating German 7th Army inside a shrinking pocket near the town of Falaise. It is a slaughter. The roads choke with retreating German convoys. Allied fighter bombers, Hawker Typhoons armed with 60-pound rockets, and P-47 Thunderbolts descend like birds of prey. They strafe the bottlenecked, panicked columns relentlessly from dawn until dusk. 10,000 Germans are ripped apart on these narrow country roads. 50,000 more surrender in sheer desperation. Because the German army still relies heavily on horse-drawn logistics, thousands of horses die screaming alongside the men. The carnage is so absolute, the sun-baked rotting smell of the dead is so horrific, that Allied pilots flying hundreds of feet in the air are physically sickened in their cockpits. By August 30th, the shattered remnants of the German forces retreat across the River Seine. The 2.5-month nightmare of Normandy is over. The liberation of Europe has begun. But the blood soaked into the sand, the swamps, and the hedgerows of France will never wash away.